everyone, and welcome to the Culture Cast. I'm Chris Stashew, and I am joined by one of my podcasting mentors, a man that I truly look up to because he makes good podcasts. Unlike me, the host of the Projection Booth, Mr. Mike White.
I don't feel so well.
Boy, after watching this movie, oof, boy. So, we're kicking off Body Horror July with a look at Brandon Cronenberg, not David Cronenberg. Unfortunately, I think at this point, aside from Existence and Scanners, we have done the David Cronenberg films that would be part of this month. So we are going to be talking about Brandon Cronenberg's Antiviral.
Fame. Glamour. Perfection. What if you could find it all at the tip of a needle? Here at the Lucas Clinic, we strive to bring you closer to celebrity than ever before. With samples drawn directly from the source, you can be connected in ways you never imagined.
Do you not agree that the mania surrounding celebrity is reaching an unhealthy level?
No, I don't. My clients want to feel more connected to those people that they see in the magazines and on television.
Enjoy.
So far, I've had all her diseases.
Must have been expensive.
Is there any way you could spread it?
What happened to Hannah, guys?
That's pretty shocking.
Have you started bleeding yet?
Bleeding?
From your mouth.
I don't understand how this isn't considered cannibalism.
You've become involved in something sinister.
It's a weird business, Syd.
So, the film is directed by the aforementioned Brandon Cronenberg, written by Brandon Cronenberg. It stars perpetually weird-looking gentleman Caleb Landry Jones. It also stars Sarah Gadone, a little bit of Malcolm McDowell in there thrown in for good measure as well. So, Mike, curious, this was not your first time seeing this. What did you think the first time you saw it, and what do you think watching it now?
Well, the first time I saw it, I actually watched it in chunks, probably like 20-minute chunks. And I think I actually liked it better that way than I did sitting down and watching it all as one piece. I think this could actually work really well as like a small series because there's so many ideas and so many things that could be really played out. And then you've got the corporate intrigue and all those kind of things. I like the story. I think it's very solid. Some of it goes a little slow for me, but overall, I really like the idea of this film, and I think that the execution is pretty close to exactly what it should be.
So, this was the first time I'd seen it, but it was one of those films that I've been meaning to watch, and so a lot of the months on the Culture Cast stem from either movies that my friends like yourself want to talk about, or movies that I want to talk about that I have never seen, or things that really excite me. And so, with body horror, it's probably my favorite subgenre of horror, and this is one of those films that I had never seen. I mean, if you've listened to the Culture Cast at all, you'll know that I love Videodrome. It's one of my favorite films. I'm also a huge fan of The Fly. So David Cronenberg, Brandon Cronenberg, kind of in the same wheelhouse. You know, he doesn't necessarily have to take after his dad, but he clearly has. I will say that it is an interesting film. I didn't like it that much, but I also don't think the reasons I didn't like it were unintentional. I think a lot of the reasons that I wasn't fully on board with the film were intentional. Namely, Caleb Landry Jones is... Can we just talk about him for a second? Because he's just weird, right?
Well, I think he's perfect for this because...
Yeah, I agree, but he's kind of weird, right?
Like weird looking or weird acting?
It's just, there's something about him, he has that air of kind of... I mean, most people haven't seen this film, but most people have seen the film that kind of launched him into the stratosphere of kind of pop culture recognition, which was when he played
3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, right?
When he was in Get Out.
Oh, right, he was in that, wasn't he?
He was the brother, the creepy brother who was asking Daniel Kaluuya's character if he knows how to do MMA, and that really tense scene at the dinner table. So he works really well there too. He's very much a character actor who, when he is cast correctly, he is perfectly cast. But I'm not sure he can support an entire film.
I think he works well in this role because you can never really tell what he's thinking, and that there's so much of this intrigue that's going on. It's good that we're kept at a distance. We definitely can't empathize, or I can't empathize with Syd as much as maybe I would with another actor. I like that he keeps me at arm's length.
He's very much a cipher. You're not sure what's going on with his character, which is fine. But at the same time, that also makes it hard to get invested in the film if he's kept at such an arm's length.
He reminded me a little of Brad Dourif at times.
Yeah, he's got that Brad Dourif. Is it the cheekbones? Is that what it is?
Sometimes
is it the eyes?
Sometimes it's the hair.
Yeah, that too. I could see that.
Like that young Brad Dourif, the Billy Babbitt, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest type hairdo. Like when the strands will go towards the front, and especially when he's feeling really sick in the movie, or like when he's confronting the main character from Get Out, his hair is all wild and stuff. It's just something about that, plus his intensity. And I think him being a ginger really plays well into this role as well, because he looks so pale and wan throughout so much of this, and it just makes him look like he's sick.
Well, and the funny thing about him is I didn't realize this until I was doing the prerequisite research necessary to do a podcast.
You mean Wikipedia?
No.
Oh, the IMDb trivia page. I got it.
Yeah, no, the Esquire interview, actually.
Oh, okay.
So he grew up like 10 minutes from where I live, which is kind of weird, because him and I grew up in Dallas around the same time. So, because he was in his first movie in 2007, and that would have been a year before I graduated from high school. So he was like in the Dallas area when I lived there as well, which I found kind of interesting because he grew up in kind of like the burgeoning kind of like folk rock scene of Dallas, which like totally makes sense when you look at him, because put his hair in a ponytail and he looks like he could be the lead, singer for a folk rock band as well, which he was. So I just find it kind of interesting, but again, like it kind of he has that interesting quality, like you said, that you can't really tell what's going on with him. But again, for this film, it totally works.
Yeah. Sometimes I get lost in the intrigue a little bit. Like it's like last night rewatching it, I was just like, wait a second, who's Derek Lessing? Where do I know this name? Mm-hmm. So. I let that first part kind of fly by.
Well, but I think that's I think that is the issue with this film, is that, and this, I think this is unfortunately going to be kind of a straight knock at the film. For being a body horror film, it doesn't have enough body horror. Frankly, I would actually go out on a limb and say it doesn't have very much.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, for this being the opening film of this month, for a subgenre of horror I really love so much, it is a very reserved version of body horror. I mean, look, it's not Street Trash, it's not The Fly, Jeff Goldblum's dick isn't falling off and being kept in a jar. This is kind of this weird spot where there's some body horror ideas that are kind of touched upon, but not really fully built out. And then that's kind of what I feel like you were getting at when you were talking about the intrigue.
Right. I mean, I like the central idea of this film, this whole idea of celebrity gone wild, and what's the next step of this?
But that kind of gets lost, right?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, yeah, I mean, it leads us into the story, but yeah, I could have appreciated a little bit more of that. Like the whole idea of eating your favorite celebrities, like having cells and steaks made out of celebrities. It's like you want to be so close to them that you want to eat them. You want to have their diseases. It's like, okay, I'm getting there, but yeah, I think a little bit more of like the selling, or even like a third product idea would make it, and of course there's the afterlife stuff towards the end, but even another product I think would have helped sell this.
And the other thing is the idea that the whole film focuses on one celebrity also, to me, felt a little bit like a detriment. Because we're never really given an idea as to why she's so famous. And maybe that's part of the point. I would assume, reading kind of what Brandon Cronenberg talks about in some of the interviews about the film, that it's inspired by people that aren't exactly celebrities. They're kind of just celebrities for celebrity's sake, kind of like Kim Kardashian or Paris Hilton. So, I mean, that makes sense, but at the same time, like, I was kind of curious as to why this one woman is so, like, revered so much by these people that they want to get herpes on their face like she did.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder if it would have made it even more biting had they used real celebrities.
Right?
Like,
why not do that?
Like, oh, well, we can give you Tom Cruise's overbite or something like that.
And like, look, I think you probably could have found someone to play themselves in the film as well.
Right.
Right.
I mean,
and again, I think that would have amped up this, because then it would have been able to put in context why we should care. Because I had a hard time understanding why I should care about this one character.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Well, yeah, I mean, her name, Hannah Geist meaning ghost, I mean, she's pretty much a cipher. She's just like, I stand in for every celebrity, but there are so many different levels of celebrity and so many different types of celebrity that, yeah, it would have been nice to kind of build that out. And they make reference to other celebrities, like, oh, I'm, serving up these so-and-so steaks when I'm telling them that they're Hannah Geist. And it's just like, yeah, but I would like to know a little bit more about that. Maybe show that level and how she outprices the other celebrities and why that is. Or like, here's a scandal that's going to rocket this person's stock to whatever level, and just show it more like a real world where it's like, we've got people that are hot and then they're not. And suddenly something happens, there's a sex tape or somebody makes a blunder or whatever, and then they get off of the list or they get onto the list. And people, there are these news cycles that happen every day, and it's almost like a stock market. I mean, they've got stock markets for movies, those horrible games that you see before a movie comes on, where it's like, oh, have your fantasy league of movies. It's like, go ahead and do that, but with like stock tickers and who's the most important thing and whose disease do you want to get because they're the hot commodity.
Yeah, just for all of the good, like you said, like for all of the good ideas, Brandon Cronenberg just doesn't build on them enough. For me,
yeah, I think there could be more.
Yeah, and look, like you said, it's a great idea. It's an interesting concept. It's a novel concept. I mean, it's unlike any film. It's not like just your generic Friday night horror movie that you go down to the multiplex and watch. There are some headier ideas here. The problem
it's very smart sci-fi.
But the problem is, and this is where it comes into play that his dad is who his dad is, it almost feels like Cronenberg light. And if it were his dad making this movie, David Cronenberg would knock this film out of the park, and he would amp it up and really go for it. And it's not like David Cronenberg was dealing with these like insane budgets in the 80s. It's not like he was really blowing up the world with CGI either in the 90s. He was working on a pretty restrictive budget, so when I look at this film that had a $3 million Canadian budget and wonder to myself, what is this missing? It feels like it's missing just that punch that you expect from David Cronenberg films. That didn't transfer to this film. It's just missing something, that like little oomph. Because like Videodrome has the chest vagina and the heady kind of discussion about TV and real life violence and, the blurring of the line between reality and fiction. The Fly is dealing with, kind of losing yourself and kind of the transformative nature of science and what lengths are we willing to go to for science. And then towards the end, the whole insect politics monologue, which is one of the best monologues in the film. And then this film doesn't have anything like that. And I feel like that is a huge missed opportunity, because if it had it would have pushed the film just that much farther. Just that little oomph, that little something to get us up over the hill, to put this in kind of the conversation about really well done body horror films from, the Cronenberg family at this point.
I mean, I'm not going to try to be the armchair quarterback here, but I think one of the things that would have helped this movie is if they had maybe trimmed it just a little bit and made it run a little faster, because last night at one point I paused it and I was like, oh shit, there's 30 more minutes to go. It really feels like there should be another 10 minutes to go. And it's like, yeah, this movie could move at a faster pace, and I think that would be okay. Like, it's very meditative, and the music's very, electronica and moody and stuff. And I'm like, okay, you can still do that, but you can make it move a little faster.
Well, and, the crazy thing is I don't know if you read this, but he trimmed 6 minutes out of the film. 6
whole minutes?
I mean, that's a lot, right?
Not when I'm thinking he should cut down like a half an hour.
Well, yeah, but I mean, what my point is, like, it's not like he didn't trim the movie already.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it could have used more for sure. I mean, the whole, like you mentioned, the whole first act of this film is just plodding.
Yeah, but that really sets it up.
But it doesn't do a very good job of setting it up. Because, like you mentioned, with the Derek character, who is kind of the, he's kind of the one who's moving the plot, even though he's, kind
barely
of
there.
Barely there. Like you said, like, I didn't even know what the fuck they're talking about. Like, he's just okay, and he's been arrested.
Yeah, the thing for me was, like, towards the end when she quote-unquote dies, and they have the funeral. And then I'm like, wait a second, is she really dead? I don't think she's dead. And then, no, she's not dead. Okay, is this a dream? I can't really tell what's going on. Like, I felt kind of dumb with that stuff. But then I was like, okay, I guess I see what you guys are doing. But again, I think you could just make this go a little faster.
Yeah, it needed to be... I don't know. I think the issue, like you mentioned, is it needed to be edited down. But I also think instead of going like 4 different directions with the ideas, Brandon Cronenberg needed to focus on one.
Mm-hmm.
1 or 2. Focus on the celebrity, the virility of the viral nature, no pun intended, of celebrity. And then the eating of the celebrity meat.
Yeah.
Like, that needed to be the focus of the film. Like, 100%. Those 2 things, and you can build an entire film around that.
I mean, I could see this being a really good book.
Oh,
but
yeah.
It's a little too scattered to be a movie. He needed to tighten up his ideas a little.
Yeah, and it unfortunately feels... Sometimes when you have a film that's kind of scattershot, they can get away with it if it's kind of stylistically interesting, or the lead is interesting and the characters are interesting. But outside of it being very stark white and very antiseptic almost in a way,
mm-hmm.
It's very clean, especially when he's at the Lucas Clinic. There's like the style for me, it's just, again, it's not that it's not there, it's just, it is not there, but that was intentional.
It's weird to me that you have Malcolm McDowell in a movie and he's not the big baddie at the end. Like, when he shows up, I was like, oh, okay, this is the guy that's behind it all. But then he ends up not being that, and I was like, wait, no, that's why you have Malcolm McDowell in a movie these days, is he's the bad guy behind it all.
Well, I figured when it's Malcolm McDowell in a movie, you're also going to have him in there for more than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, look, what it probably was is Brandon, like I said, we don't want to play armchair quarterback, but here's what it is. Brandon Cronenberg asked his dad if he could talk to Malcolm McDowell, and he got Malcolm McDowell. Or Malcolm McDowell's working with him because he's David Cronenberg's son.
Right.
And, he gave him the minimum amount of time, but just enough time to put him in, to be billed in the film.
Yeah.
It's almost better, though, if you don't have that.
Right.
Because then it seems like either have him in the film, like you said, as a villain or as a major character, as opposed to the character of Levine, who completely underdeveloped villain who just gets killed, ?
Yeah, with the... Yeah, I thought for
at the end?
Yeah, I don't see that being a death blow.
Right.
At worst, that's an inconvenience. Maybe he's got a scar. Maybe a speech impediment.
Yeah, and instead of having this character who's woefully underdeveloped and not really a physical threat or a psychological, mental threat because he's, I outsmarted you, it's like, okay, sure, why not? You could have had someone like Malcolm McDowell, who is revealed to be the villain at the end of the film.
And the only person I recognized in the film when I watched it the first time was Sheila McCarthy, other than Malcolm McDowell, I should say, was Sheila McCarthy, who plays the manager. And that's almost a retro kind of thing where I'm just like, oh, I just saw her in the Umbrella Academy. You know, I didn't think like, oh, she was the reporter in Die Hard 2, but like she's a familiar face. And otherwise, it's like, here's this great cast of relative unknowns. You know, again, I recognize the main guy, Caleb Landry, from like Twin Peaks now, or from Get Out. So it's like when I saw him the first time, I'm like, I've never seen this guy before. So you never know. The stakes are really high with something like that because you don't know who's going to die. You don't know who the bad guy is. You don't know who the good guy is. And then, like I said, you introduce Malcolm McDowell and you're like, oh, okay, here's a very familiar face. So he's got to do something more important than be the character he was.
Right. Well, and I normally at the beginning of the podcast, I normally mention some of the bigger players in the episode. And for, a film like this, that was a little hard because, like you mentioned, a lot of the folks are pretty much character actors, which is fine. And that's a good thing because, look, character actors are what Hollywood is built on, and they're the ones that support the main actors. So, I also recognize Laura Jean Chorostecki from the Hannibal TV show, where she plays the gender-swapped Freddie Lowndes, which is one of the best things they've ever done on a TV show of gender swapping, because it actually really works in a way that shouldn't be surprising, because that character, I mean, we talked about Manhunter before, the two of us, but I agree completely that this film, it needed to be tightened up a lot.
Right.
But again, there's a lot of good ideas. So it's not lacking good ideas. It's just the good ideas aren't laser focused.
It's almost like a Zardoz, where there's like too many things to focus on, and it just needs to be brought down to like something a little bit more palatable.
Because then at the end of the film, you have the cell garden coming back into importance, and like a really bizarre ending that I don't know if I fully understand.
Yeah.
Like he's sucking her blood. Why?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just because I'm a guy, but I thought for sure he was going to open up a slot in that thing and was going to fuck her.
Well, look, that would have been Cronenberg-esque.
Right? That would have been like Crash.
Yeah, that would have been what I expect from Cronenberg, or any Cronenberg. So yeah, it's I guess the only way I can interpret the ending is he's still doing at his new job what he was doing at his old job, which is infecting himself and using himself as an incubator.
I guess I can see that. I was thinking that he was so close to her that he, literally was drinking her blood, but I think I like your interpretation better.
Well, I mean, like, neither interpretation is better than the other in my mind, because they don't give you enough to go off of to understand where it came from to begin with.
Right.
Like, how did Arvid even get involved in making the cell garden on like a corporate level?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then it turns out that it's Hannah is in the thing.
Right.
And we're supposed
they'll never let her die.
Yeah, and we're supposed to care why?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's almost like, they love her in such a weird, twisted way that they're going to keep her alive forever and just use her for what her body can produce.
Right. Which, again, perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so mushed and mashed together that at the end of the film, I just didn't care. I was kind of just glad for the film to be over. Like, perfectly honest. Like, I was just like, okay, this is an interesting film, but it's not, I mean, I don't think you're going to revisit it anytime soon.
No, like I said, I think I watched it the right way the first time in pieces, because then it was like, okay, next time on Antiviral, last time on Antiviral, because I would back up a few minutes and just be like, oh, okay, this is where we're at, and then go from there, because it felt better episodic than it did as a whole piece. Like 108 minutes felt like it dragged, and yeah, it just didn't really come together.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think, unfortunately, back to what this month is, it's going to be getting there next on the next episode. It also doesn't have enough body horror. It just doesn't.
Right. I mean, I picture stuff, especially when it comes to Cronenberg, of like machine meets, physicality, something mechanical in there. I like that Fast Company is in his filmography where, it's 100% machine and it's not necessarily the body stuff, but then the body as the machine and how Hannah at the end is mixed up with the machine. To me, the only part of Antiviral other than the end part that really works for me is when he's got that weird grill in his mouth and there's the blood coming out. I was like, oh, okay. But then that seems to be like a dream sequence. So I was like, okay.
Which is super... Like, when I watched the trailer for the film, I was like, oh, that looks cool. I wonder what scene that's going to be. And then when it was in the film, I was like, really?
Yeah, it's not like the arm gun from, that from Videodrome. It's
or the
not
hand
that
grenade.
mixing. Yeah.
the fucking hilarious hand... That's one of my favorite fucking gags in the entire movie. Is the hand grenade. So it's really unfortunate that the best kind of body horror gag in the film is a dream sequence.
Yeah. I'm very curious about his next film. I was looking that up last night because I was like, oh, I wonder what he's done since then, because Antiviral feels like it's a few years ago, which it was.
More than just a few.
Yeah. It looks like he's got one called Possessor that's in post right now. And it looks like he's kind of leaned on his dad for some more help because it's like Jennifer Jason Leigh is one of the main characters. I'm like, okay. So kind of back to Existenz territory.
And Sean Bean is in there as well.
Do you think he's going to get killed?
I mean, let's put the man's track record on blast, probably, because his track record would say yes.
Okay.
But again, I mean, it's 8 years between films.
Yeah.
Holy shit, that's a long time.
Yeah, but it kind of gives me hope that maybe his dad's got another movie in the works.
Well, I thought for a while they were talking about David Cronenberg, working with Netflix, and releasing some Netflix exclusive film, which would be super cool. I'm down with that. But nothing ever came of it, so it's kind of unfortunate because, I mean, again, Cronenberg is absolutely one of my favorite directors. I mean, Videodrome and The Fly are two great examples of what he can bring when he really brings it. And I hope his son moves in that direction a little bit more. Or does his own thing, but, like, find what makes you and fully commit to it.
Just find what makes you happy.
Yeah, find you, man.
Just embrace it.
Embrace the you in YOU.
Embrace the you and be part of the universe.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. So, what would you give Antiviral out of 5?
Again, for the ideas and stuff, I'd probably say like 3 out of 5. But execution, probably more like 2. So 2.5.
Yeah, I would give it a 2. It's okay. It is not enough body horror for me to even really, like, honestly, if I could go back and change it, I would, because it's not body horror enough to be the lead-off film for this month.
Fail.
Yeah. Oops. So, I would give it like a 2. And again, it just has those, like you said, it has those great ideas, but just nothing to capitalize on.
Yeah.
So, we will take a break and play a preview for the next Culture Cast.
I love this earthquake. It was the best one I ever seen. All my enemies are dead.
Hello, dispatch.
I know you're awake.
An hour and a half is a real long time. I don't think I can stick around for that long.
You know you want it. You know.
That's that doo-doo.
I hate this movie.
That's right. On the next Culture Cast, we are going to be talking about Kuso, which you can go and watch right now on Shudder. So head on over there and check that movie out. I haven't seen it yet, but I have heard that it is insane. It is the directorial debut by Flying Lotus, so sounds like it's got some body horror, which obviously it has to. Hopefully, even though this movie didn't. So I am looking forward to talking about that with my good friend Jess Byard. Until then, however, where can people find you, Mr. Mike White? What's going on over at the projection booth?
Well, I need to find out what this Cousteau movie is. Is it about Jacques Cousteau?
No. K-U-S-O.
Oh, okay.
Not Jacques Cousteau.
Oh, that was the detective that was in those Pink Panther movies.
That's Inspector Clouseau. Jesus Christ.
Okay.
That's Inspector Clouseau. Then there's Jacques Cousteau. If you want to watch the Jacques Cousteau movie, just go watch. What is that fucking Wes Anderson movie?
No, thank you.
Yeah, that movie's no times 10. Wes Anderson. I'm cool. They're not.
As you were talking about body horror in this fine month, I am looking at Sci-Fi July and going through a whole bunch of sci-fi films, some alternate history, some more straight sci-fi, some sci-fi fantasy like Krull, so all over the place, but it is Sci-Fi July, which I named it a long time ago, so long ago that I forgot that that's why I put sci-fi in July, because of that nice assonance there.
I like that.
Thank you.
Sci-Fi July, that's a good one. And I believe I was just recently on a podcast of yours that went up.
Were you?
Talking about one of my favorite films of 2018, Annihilation.
Oh, which is another sci-fi film.
It sure is. And it is July, and it is sci-fi, so there you go.
Wow.
And it's a body horror movie too, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it kind of fits almost even better. I mean, those snake intestines. Whoa.
I think it fits better than this film, that's for sure.
I think you might be right. So yeah, just go ahead, turn this episode off now, and go listen to the Annihilation episode, and you'll be okay.
Yeah, well, you know what? You can find me on Twitter at casualty_Chris. You know where to find this on the internet, culturecast.com. We're on all podcatchers, both Android and iOS. You can also find us on Spreaker. That's where we do the business of podcasting with those fine folks over at Spreaker. Big thanks as always to _91 for the intro, outro music for the Culturecast. We'll catch you on the next episode.